about what this means to me, what this means to someone who is so dedicated. How many people risk everything that they possibly can they stepped in America, in New York, right over there on Ellis Island, including my great-grandfather, in 1895, about 100 yards over his farm. They believed what I believe, which that New York is the land of opportunity. America is the land of opportunity. New York is what connects the rest of the world to the United States of America. Unfortunately, our leadership over the last 14 months, over the last 10 years, have been doing everything that they possibly can to disincentivize New Yorkers from building their businesses, from building their lives, from educating their children here in New York. Well, under Governor Giuliani, I can promise all of you this, my fellow New Yorkers. In a Governor Giuliani, you will get somebody who will light the economic furnace of New York. Do what DeWitt Clinton knew when he built the Erie Canal, which was the fact that New York would be the center of commerce in the world again. We will cut taxes, and New York will no longer be the highest tax state in America. We will do everything that we can to cut red tape and deregulate all of those small businesses who have been crushed over the last 14 months. They need to have a chance. Those who today, in modern day, risk all. We need, as public servants, to make sure that we are serving them and not serving ourselves the way that Andrew Cuomo is doing. I think we've all seen how Andrew Cuomo has served himself. Received $5 million for a book deal. Well, while Andrew Cuomo makes 7 figures a year serving himself, I'm happy to go volunteer my time to be the candidate for governor of the 57th governor of the great state of New York. We'll continue from an education standpoint to push school choice, to make sure that any community that has a charter school will get a charter school. I will personally take on the UFT to make sure that any community that wants a charter school will get one. Andrew Cuomo came in and said on day one that he was going to be an advocate for school choice. Well, this most recent $212 billion budget, I'd call it more of a boondoggle than anything else, shows exactly where his loyalties are to. The 460 charter schools that exist in New York State now, that cap remains. There was no progress done there. Instead, the teachers union got a 15% raise. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? And this happens to be true more for New Yorkers that don't have the means than ones that do have the means. You will get a governor that will make sure that our tax dollars follow our students and follow our kids. And they will be dictated by parents, not by bureaucrats based in Albany. And third, and maybe most important, in a Governor Giuliani, you will get somebody that has a strategy to reduce crime in a record-setting fashion. I've heard that before from somewhere. I think his name was Giuliani also. The truth is, there's been a war on our cops over the last few years. Our police officers are some of our best citizens in the world. We need to make sure that our New York police officers, everywhere from Buffalo to Albany, to Binghamton, to Utica, to Albany, to Potsdam, New York City, that we respect our police, that we protect their qualified immunity. And if a police officer willfully does something wrong, then they get punished. But the truth is, 99% of our police officers are some of the best citizens in our state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it truly is amazing to be here in front of Lady Liberty today. I'm happy to take all of your questions. I'll just conclude by saying that this is a great honor, and to be here where my great-grandfather first came in to New York, first step foot, the Giuliani's first step foot in America. He believed what I believe, which is that we can make New York truly the beacon of hope in the world. Please, questions?
Not to be too snarky, but let's start with what makes you qualified for this.
Sure. Well, I am the only candidate that spent parts of 5 different decades of my life in politics or public service. So over the last over the last 4 years in the White House. I've worked on some of the major initiatives that have come out of there, including the Paycheck Protection Program, which saved tens of millions of jobs for Americans, as well as making sure that the MTA received their CARES Act funding, which saved tens of thousands of jobs for New Yorkers. I look forward to going across the state and showing New Yorkers exactly why and how I am qualified for this. But the truth is, I have a vision, and I know that I can get this done. I know that New Yorkers will see that there needs to be somebody who is tough, that's going to be able to take on the swamp in Albany. And in a Governor Giuliani, you'll have somebody that will absolutely take on that Albany.
How do you get 5 decades? You're only 35.
Parts of 5 decades. Let me clarify. I said parts of 5 decades. So if we go back through it, my father's first campaign was 1989, so we could do the math. I spent parts of 32 years in politics. So,
how do you think it's going to go over there with New York? The fact that New York and the White House for Donald Trump, he's not real popular.
look, one of the things that New Yorkers will learn about me, if they don't know that already, is that I'm a genuine guy. I'm not going to run away from my path. I worked 4 years in the White House with President Trump. I'll say that right now. I'm not running from it. I'm not hiding from it. I'm very proud of many of the policies that we've been able to accomplish. What I want to do is I want to present many of those policies and some other policy to New Yorkers, because the truth is, I don't think those policies just benefit red or blue New Yorkers. I think they benefit all New Yorkers.
Andrew, today Congressman Zeldin.
Yes, we just had a great conversation last night and this morning. He has been very, very important in terms of the strategy.
Congressman Zeldin today said, "Welcome to the race." He's looking forward to the day that you endorse him as the Republican nominee. What's your
Well, what I would say is all of the candidates, all of the announced candidates, all of the ones that are thinking of getting in the race, these people are all my friends. And I believe that we're going to be fighting together for New York over the next 50 years. So I do welcome the spirited debate. I think it's very important. And just from a strategy perspective, I'm expecting the Democratic nomination to be a very spirited debate as well. I think that's probably going to drive a lot of these headlines. If we don't have multiple candidates traveling the state over the next year on the Republican side, then the truth is we're going to be introducing a candidate in July of 2022, and that's going to put us at a major disadvantage. So I look forward to actually going out there and having those wonderful debates with all of the announced and unannounced candidates.
But Zeldin does say he already has the support of dozens of Republican county chairmen all across the state.
Yeah, I think ultimately I look forward to gaining the support of the 19.5 million New Yorkers over the next 18 months. I'm very confident that on November 8th, 2022, New York is going to elect its future. New York is going to elect the vision that we need in order to make New York truly the beacon of hope that it once was.
Andrew, New York's slated to open up tomorrow. You know, still a lot of restrictions will be in place for small businesses and for folks who choose not to get vaccinated. What will a post-pandemic New York look like under a Giuliani administration? And do you support COVID passports?
So, I do not support COVID passports. I think that ultimately what we need to make sure that we are doing is that we all have our First Amendment rights. I think that certainly is a violation. Now look, I do believe that people should be vaccinated and they should make that decision. But that should be a personal decision, not a decision of the government. For far too long, we've had the government dictating to us what we should do. Those are personal decisions for New Yorkers and Americans. So I do support people getting vaccinated if they so choose, and that is the important point. This should be by the people and for the people, not by the government bureaucrats that are in Washington, that are in Albany. I'm still on the Washington D.C. over here. It's been 4 years, but that are in Albany. What was the other question?
Do you support COVID passports? You answered that question, though. Mask in particular, new CDC guidelines on masking. A lot of New Yorkers still who are vaccinated, still walking around outside fully masked. What is your take on that?
I think they're welcome to do that if they want to, but ultimately I think it should be the individual's choice. You know, I think that's one of the things that we need to remember, and it's why businesses should have been open far earlier here in New York State. I mean, this should have been a decision that people would make. If people ultimately wanted to participate and ultimately wanted to help small businesses go into restaurants, that should have been an option that they had. That shouldn't be an option that the government takes away from them and dictates. For far too long, the government has dictated. If somebody wants to wear a mask, they are welcome to wear that mask. I have no problem. But what I would say is, now that it is lifted tomorrow, I will be taking my mask. I have the antibodies, and I look forward to I look forward to a time when we have our individuality and taking that mask off. You know, it represents so much when you think about it in terms of being yourself, being an individual, right? There's something about the mask that makes you one of all. Our individuality is one thing we need to protect in the United States of America. So I support anybody's decision whether or not they want to wear a mask or not.
Would you do away with the state passport?
What's that?
Would you do away with the state's Excelsior vaccination passport?
I don't think the government should be collecting information
Would you
on
do
New
away with
Yorkers.
it?
Well, I'll answer that question this way. I don't think the government should be collecting information on New Yorkers and dictating where they can or where they cannot go. I find that to be, frankly, un-American.
Will your dad be playing a role on this campaign?
Yes, he will. You know, look, we had a long conversation last night throughout this entire process. We had a great conversation. Really, I've gotten a lot of experience. You know, you got to think about it this way, right? You've got the greatest prosecutor in the history of Southern history. You've got the greatest mayor, not just in the history of New York, but in the history of America. You're foolish if you don't use him as an asset. The man was able to accomplish what I hope to accomplish in New York State, which is turning around what many people think may be an ungovernable place. In his case, it was New York City. In my case, it will be New York State. What I can tell you is there's no more effective playbook than the Giuliani playbook, and he will be implementing the Giuliani playbook to make sure that we can turn around New York State.
Do you have an idea of what role that will be for him?
We're still developing exactly how the role, but the truth is, he's always been committed. So I talk to him times a day. We'll continue to do that. He'll certainly have a public role to an extent, but you know, this is we're a young campaign. This is day one.
Do you agree with your father that the presidential election was unfair and Joe Biden was the rightful winner?
I am focused completely on making sure that the 2022 election in New York is a fair election.
And are you worried about the investigation that you have from the
I think, and I made statements about that last week. I stand completely by those statements. As a matter of fact, I made those statements before two things ended up happening. First off, you had NBC News, the Washington Post, and New York Times retract a major part of their story. You're correct. We'll call it retract, but it actually was. The second thing was we found out recently that Apple, that iCloud, was actually being monitored. His iCloud was being monitored back in 2019 while he was representing the sitting president of the United States. If that doesn't worry every American, the fact that the Justice Department would be monitoring the president of the United States lawyer, then you're just not paying attention. That's not a red or blue thing. That's a red-white thing.
Are you going to see President Trump support?
I look forward to seeing President Trump soon. You know, the truth is, I'm focused on getting to support the 19.5 million New Yorkers that are here right now. I certainly don't. I don't distance myself, or I don't, not ask for it. I always would love to sit down with the President of the United States.
Do you disagree with the many New Yorkers who think President Trump did a bad job?
Well, I think his policies were some of the best policies in the last 50 years in our country. I mean, think about just, for example, you know, you're talking about 2019, the lowest African-American unemployment in the history of our country, the lowest Hispanic American unemployment in the history of our country, the lowest Asian American employment in the history of our country, the lowest overall unemployment numbers of the last 50 years. What we need is somebody in New York who's going to get those employment numbers back down and not help the unemployment numbers in Florida.
You said you have the antibodies. Are you vaccinated?
I have the antibodies. I am not vaccinated, but I continually get tested with the antibodies.
Are you planning to get vaccinated?
I'm going to make that decision when I don't have the antibodies anymore. The one good thing about the antibodies, if you've had it, is it actually is even better than the vaccine. Here's why. With the vaccine, you can still transmit. With the antibodies, you can't transmit. So I can't receive and I can't transmit. Obviously, as that goes along, that production comes up, so there's a certain amount of antibodies. I continue to get monitored every month on that, and my monitorization is in the next 10
Do you know when you had COVID?
Yes, I had it. I announced it actually, so I don't want to get the date wrong. It was right before Thanksgiving in November, so it was over Thanksgiving. It was a lonely Thanksgiving this year. It was for many New Yorkers and many Americans. That's one of the things that I really look forward to. I look forward to all these gatherings. I miss being around my family, my friends, fellow New Yorkers. I mean, you think about now, we're on, what's this, May 18th? On May 18th, Memorial Day weekend is next. It's time that we honor our bravest Americans. I look forward to getting back to celebrating those Americans, those New Yorkers again, getting all back together.
Andrew, a lot of individuals and small businesses have left New York over the last year. Why should they come back?
Great question. And right now, I don't know if I have a great answer for them right now. But I'll tell you what, in 19 months I will have a very good answer. And that's because we're going to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that small businesses, all businesses, are incentivized with making their footprint here in New York, for expanding their footprint here in New York. The truth is, I love New York. Isn't this great? This is a good New York press conference. You know, we just need like a tab to go by. But it's a good New York press conference. I lost my train of thought right
Why
now.
should small businesses and individuals who left New York during the pandemic come back to New York?
So, because right now, I'm not certain if there's a very good answer to that. It's been, businesses have been disincentivized, and that's why I think the 2022 election is so important. If we ultimately don't fix this in 2022, it might be to the point where, and I don't want to say New York doesn't recover. I always believe that New York will recover. Always believe that. But I don't want to wait until I'm a grandfather for New York to recover. I want it to recover right now. And I know with our policy, that within the first 3 to 4 years, New York will go from being the highest tax state, one of the least business-friendly states in the country, to one of the most business-friendly states. Quite frankly, one of the first calls that I'm going to make on January 1st, 2023, is to Governor DeSantis. And tell Governor DeSantis that his ride, his easy ride, it's done with, Ron. I'm sorry to say that. Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, they're the realtors of the year down in Florida. Not going to be with the Governor Giuliani.
Are you confident that the winner of the Republican
I believe that I am going to win the Republican primary, and I believe I'm going to get elected on November 8th, 2022. It's a good question, and I think it's tough to handicap that race. If I was a good handicapper, I'd go to Belmont in 17 or 18 days, or whenever that actually is. Look, I think Governor Cuomo should have resigned when he killed those 9,000 Yorkers. Let's be honest about this. There were beds in the Javits. The USS Comfort was being sent up by the Trump administration in the Hudson over here in order to make sure that New Yorkers had the space and the bed. What killed those 9,000 senior New Yorkers was nothing more, nothing else than Andrew Cuomo's ego. That's what killed him. He did not want anybody else to get a political win but himself. And Andrew Cuomo was thinking of other New Yorkers, that those 9,000 extra senior citizens would be alive today.
Given your support for business owners,
Yes.
would you support them having the right to say that non-vaccinated patrons should wear masks while vaccinated patrons don't have to?
Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. And I think that's the beauty of the free market, if you think about it, right? And I always thought about this. Certainly, the initial shutdown I understood, right? We're trying to figure out what we had and how we had it. But when we started getting to May of last year, about a year ago today, I think that's when the free market really could have dictated. If a business or a restaurant wanted to have 25% capacity, and another business wanted to have 75% capacity, American citizens, New Yorkers, would have been able to dictate what actually was successful by where their dollars actually go, by which businesses that they actually chose to go into, that they actually chose to shop at, to eat at. And so I truly believe, I accept that business's decision to choose whether or not they want masks to be in there or not. But that should be the business owner's decision, not the government.
So just to clarify, as of May of last year, you don't think there should have been masking mandates?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't say that at all.
Okay.
What I said was, I do think that that's where businesses should have been allowed to take the lead, not the government.
All right, so in terms of masking mandates, were they the right thing to do for this past year in the state? At what point?
I'm looking forward. And I believe I'm looking forward tomorrow to the fact that mask mandates will no longer be mandated here in New York State. I also do find that very interesting, by the way, that got lifted when we found out that at the $5.1 million. I didn't realize he sold that many books. I don't know the numbers, to be honest, but I didn't realize he sold that many books. Must have been pretty expensive. I didn't get a copy, surprisingly enough. Anyway, I forget what the question was, but the truth is, I'm looking forward here to New Yorkers when they can have their individuality back, and I support businesses, I support New Yorkers to make that choice. If that's all, let me just say one final thing. It's reiterating what I had said before. I believe in New York. I believe that New York is truly that shining state on the Hill. And that we, again, with the right leadership, with the right vision, with the right strength, that we can become that beacon of light that that lady in the harbor believes in. That all of those New Yorkers, that all of those citizens of the world who risked everything to come here and to create a life, we can be that again. My fellow New Yorkers, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you over the next 18 months. This is going to be one heck of a ride. We are not going to stop, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. We're going to save this